You would like to talk about in regards to values or San Francisco history. You mentioned in an email that you wanted to talk a little bit about the history
Well,
too.
a lot of it is about the history, and a lot of it is about the climate and the geography. I mean, we have a beautiful, gentle climate. I mean, yeah, it's cold and gray and foggy most of the time, but I mean, it's better than blizzards in the winter and killing heat in the summer. And we have these qualities of light. I mean, it's sort of amazing when you're on California Street on the west side of Nob Hill. There is this golden hue to the sunlight around sunset that I've never seen anywhere else. You know, when you travel from one place to another and you learn to observe the quality of light, you know, why Van Gogh left Amsterdam and went to the south of France. Paintings from Paris are different from paintings in Provence because of the light quality. Those amazing skies that you see in Renaissance pictures. Yes, they have that in Florence. Buildings are painted outrageous colors in Petersburg because the light in Petersburg allows for it. And so on and so forth. San Francisco has, I'm looking out the window now. Yeah, we have the climate, we have the geography, and we have the position. This is the city where East and West have come together before anywhere else in America, where Chinese laborers came through to work in America. Black folks came here after the war as healers, as workers. Well, they came here after the Civil War, and then there were so many more who came during World War II. We're a melting pot. We are more ethnically diverse than most places in America, although I don't know that you can really say that anymore. But we led the country in that. We led the country in having different people living together. Now the history the history was always one for diversity and individuality. From the early days of the 49ers, when people would come out here, and it was a rough, lawless town. You know, sailors would get shanghaied. There was white slavery. There was all kinds of things going on, good and bad. But it was a free and open town with all the positives and negatives that entails. And so folks would come out here as refugees from more straight-laced society. There's always been a strong queer presence here. There's always been unusual characters. In the 19th century, we had major figures like the Emperor Norton, a rich man who lost all his money and started printing his own, and local merchants would accept it. And you know, he went a little bonkers and declared himself Emperor of San Francisco and Protector of Mexico, and everybody honored the title. And it's like, some crazy old guy, but he's harmless, he's fun. He brings a little color and excitement into our lives. Why not? You know, there's Oofty Goofty, some guy who lost his sense of pain in some accident. And, you know, he was like a local drunk or something, but he would let people pay him for the privilege of hitting him over the head or otherwise bashing him. He couldn't feel the pain. He was like this object of violence, but voluntary. You know, we've always had these odd characters in San Francisco. We've always had different people from all over. One of the strengths of America is that it is a melting pot where people can come from all over the world and bring their backgrounds and their talents to contribute to the greatness of America. And San Francisco, and New York, and other port cities, but San Francisco and New York, mostly in America, are the cities where people can do this, where they can bring their backgrounds to contribute to a broader, fuller, richer American way of life. In San Francisco, you know, there's always been a queer presence, gay people who fled eastern cities to come build a new life here, as other people would flee to build a new life here with relative anonymity and freedom. But for gay people, this is especially important. And there have always been gay clubs, bars, and gay bars and social groups here. With World War II, especially, San Francisco was a major transit point for soldiers who were going to the Pacific. And for the soldiers who were gay, they saw this beautiful city, and they decided that they would rather be here than go back to small towns where they would be expected to get married and raise children, living a lie, living a trap. You know, a lot of these gay and lesbian soldiers ended up staying in San Francisco and building a queer community here, which thrived through the 50s and the 60s, and yes, there was repression, there were bar busts, but in 1962, there was a drag queen named Jose Sarria, who ran not in drag for the Board of Supervisors. You know, he ran in his men's clothes, and he was the first openly gay candidate for public office in America. He was also the founder of the court system, which has become this big, elaborate drag culture thing where every year they elect an empress. And Jose, when he became the first empress of San Francisco, declared himself the Widow Norton, Empress of San Francisco. And that launched the whole system, which followed up with elections every year to elect a new empress and emperor, and there's the whole court thing. And they have these fundraisers for different charities, not just gay charities, but in the 60s, the early gay organizations were doing a lot of benefits for seniors and for poor children, toy drives around Christmas. You know, it's like all these gay leather bike clubs would have Toys for Tots drives. These are San Francisco values. You know, it's like who you're screwing and how you're screwing is your own business. But raising money for kids and seniors, this is a good thing. Yeah, then San Francisco, I mean, it was that same love of individualism and creativity and respect for people to live their own lives that made San Francisco the starting point for the beatniks and the hippies, and such a strong place for the gay community. Now, one reason why the gay community was so strong here is because it is a relatively small city. Yes, there are larger gay communities in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, but we only have about 700,000 people in this city. So it doesn't take that many people to gain a percentage to win some amount of political control and to get a voice. And this was also very important in the AIDS crisis, that because San Francisco is both city and county, there wasn't a lot of the buck passing between city and county governments that happened in other places in the early 80s. We also had a lot of gay people who were in public health, either as nurses or administrators or doctors, who were also politically involved. And I mean, this is just how it was. So that when the AIDS crisis hit, we had all the people in place in organizations and networks so that when the crisis hit, they had the connections and the ability and the networks to do what needed doing. And we became a very forward place for treating AIDS, for dealing with AIDS, medically, socially, charitably. Healing the ill, taking care of the poor. These are San Francisco values. And we were ready to do it, like nowhere else in the nation. There are people even coming from New York City, which you would imagine would be well set up to take care of people with AIDS. But no, New Yorkers were fleeing New York to come here. Now I've had HIV for a lot of years, but I'm healthy. And now I have liver cancer. And I'm dependent on public health. I can't live anywhere else. If I wanted to move out of San Francisco, I would have to move out of the United States of America, because there is no place else where I could live. My medical condition is such that there is nowhere else in this country where I can get the health care I need. Of course I love this city, I don't have a choice. But even in perfect health, I love San Francisco. because it is a city that takes care of people.
That's great. That's, yeah, there's a lot we can use from